Has anyone ever dreamed exactly what will happen in the future? Or did you hear about the guy who brutally axe-murdered his wife and mother-in-law and blamed ostriches and dreams? These are just some of the fantastic things we'll talk about in today's video that will cover every facet of the wonderful and often wacky world of sleep. Number 50. Unlike many of the dreams we'll discuss today, people who've had so-called wet dreams don't usually complain about them when they wake up from their never-world sexual adventure. Wet dreams are actually very common. The Journal of Sexual Medicine said about 83% of males will have one in their lives, that is, one ending with what's called a nocturnal emission. Men of all ages have them, but puberty is a common time since a boy's sexual hormones are raging. Studies show in some countries boys have them more, such as in Indonesia, where 97% of guys in the study said they've had at least one mission-emission dream before they were 24. In another study titled Frequency of Nocturnal Emissions and Masturbation Habits Among Virgin Male Religious Teenagers, it was shown that some boys refrained from spanking the monkey due to religious concerns. Still, of the boys that said they were against such DIY, about 70% of them had a wet dream. Like it or not, at some point in a male's life, nature will likely run its course during the night. Why? Your brain and body want it to happen. What about women? Number 49. Women too will feel the delights of imagined sex during their slumber. It was reported in the Journal of Sex Research that 85% of women had had a nocturnal orgasm by the age of 21. While women don't produce semen, there can still be discharge, so it's still a wet dream, just not as messy. About 8% of male and female dreams at any age have a sexual theme in them. A study showed that 4% of sex dreams for men and women ended with an orgasm. Still, research shows males tend to have wet dreams more than females. And it's been happening since history was first recorded. Number 48. In the book of Deuteronomy, there's a passage about soldiers having wet dreams. It says, "When you are encamped against your enemies, then you shall keep yourself from every evil thing. If any man among you becomes unclean because of a nocturnal emission, he shall go outside the camp." Poor guy. He was told he'd have to go outside and clean himself and not come back until morning. In many religions back in the day, wet dreams were seen as a kind of impurity. Buddhist scripture talks about demons who either suck your energy or make love to you in your dreams. In the medieval bestseller on witches and all things evil, Malleus Maleficarum, the author issued grave warnings to the people of the 15th century. He talked about succubi, female demons that liked to collect the semen of men they'd seduced while the guys were sleeping. The male equivalent is incubi, which the author said could make women pregnant. As some of you probably know, during the European witch trials between the 14th and 17th century, many thousands of women were tortured for allegedly being witches. It's thought between 200,000 and 500,000 were executed. In some cases, the women became pregnant and were accused of having sex with an incubus. That happened in Ireland in the 14th century to a woman named Dame Alice Keitler. The records show she was accused of mixing up rooster's blood and mixing the intestines with spiders and other black worms like scorpions. The text says she had boiled this mixture in a pot with the brains and clothes of a boy who had died without baptism and with the head of a robber who had been decapitated. It says she summoned demons with whom, says the text, she permitted herself to be known carnally, and that he appeared to her either as a cat, a shaggy black dog, or as a black man. She escaped to England, but her servant Petronilla de Meath, who could apparently fly and summon up demons, was tortured and burned at the stake. To sum it up, at certain times in history, sleeping and what happens during sleep have been related to all things evil. More dark stories later, but here are first a few fast facts. Number 47. The average person has about 3 to 5 dreams per night. Even if you think you never dream, you do, but you don't remember them. Number 46. Dreams might last just 5 minutes, but they might also last 20 minutes. As we spend about 1/3 of our lives sleeping, dreaming really is a huge feature of our lives. Researchers have said on average we'll spend about 6 years of life dreaming if we live to old age. Number 45. One of the annoying things with dreams is even if they are action-packed and we wake up with some parts of them in our heads, we forget them very easily. This is all about brain chemicals. Studies have said that when we're dreaming, there's a lack of the hormone norepinephrine in the cerebral cortex part of the brain, and this might be why we forget our dreams so fast. Other studies showed it might also have something to do with the density of the medial prefrontal cortex. It's all a bit complicated and the science isn't set, but basically chemical changes during sleep matter. There's also the fact that the hippocampus, a part of the brain crucial for making long-term memories, is not fully switched on when we wake up. But if you try really hard to remember the dream as soon as you wake, the hippocampus might spring into action, and you'll remember the dream for a long time to come. In those first few seconds, you have to recount the dream to yourself, otherwise it might just drift from your memory. Number 44. We have our deepest dreams during a period of sleep called REM, which means rapid eye movement. When we sleep, we start with light sleep. Then we move on to deep sleep, and after that to full deep sleep. Stage 4 is REM sleep. Your eyes start to move rapidly, your breathing becomes irregular, and your heart rate rises. A full cycle is between 90 to 120 minutes. Number 43. In studies, when people have been awoken during REM sleep, they usually say they've been dreaming in color, but in one study, 12% of people stated all their dreams were in black and white. People over the age of 55 seem to dream in black and white more often. The researchers said this might be because they watched black and white TV as kids. Number 42. Blind people dream. This was put to the test when a study featuring 15 blind adults and their 372 dreams over a 2-month period was recorded. They dreamed a lot about animals, especially their service dogs. They also dreamed a lot about eating. A bad dream for them was often about movement or travel, which is not surprising given how difficult getting around can be. Blind folks' dreams are normally less visual. If they've been blind all their lives, they only dream about taste, smell, sound, and touch. A blind film critic named Tommy Edison explained, "If I were to meet you in a dream, what I would know is your voice, maybe what perfume you're wearing." He said he might dream about someone by how they felt when he touched them. Number 41. Animals also dream, or at least many of them do. A recent scientific study scanned the brains of rats while they were asleep and also while they were awake, enjoying a spin on the rat wheel. The researchers noted how the same brain patterns on the wheel were sometimes present in dreams. Another rat study revealed rats dream about their tasks during slow-wave sleep. One of the best studies done on dreams was with cats. As you might know, when we dream, we're basically paralyzed. That's to protect us, as you really don't want to act out your dream of, say, having a fight or making love. Your brain switches off the receptors that make your muscles kick into action to stop you from doing anything stupid. Scientists in the cat study removed part of the cat's brain that switches off the muscles in their sleep. When the cats were asleep, instead of lying there paralyzed, they started fighting whatever enemy they were up against in the dream. They also made movements as if they were jumping, hunting, and grooming. Talking about sleep paralysis, this next story is scary. Number 40. One of the infographic show researchers said he often thinks he's woken up. He can hear the fan go whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. He can sense his girlfriend. He knows he's awake, but he can't move at all. He panics, shouts, and tries to grab his girlfriend, but nothing happens. That's sleep paralysis. The worst thing is, since your frontal lobes, the so-called executive suite, isn't working, you tend to panic. You think it's real. Between 8 and 50% of people will experience this in their life. Maybe 5% will have it often. It can happen because of medications, anxiety, or stress, although it's not always certain why people have it. As you'll soon see, not long ago, people were blaming sleep paralysis for killing people who had no obvious health problems. In short, it happens when REM sleep and waking up cross over, so you're dreaming and awake at the same time. What's even more trippy is it can come with sounds, like screaming, talking, or roaring sounds. But the worst is when people feel like someone is in the room with them, sometimes sitting on their chest. They can't move, can't shout, and some horrible incubus or succubus is on top of them. People have been having such experiences for centuries. They're well reported, and while scientists don't believe in entities coming to sit on people at night, 500 years ago things were different. Sleep paralysis entities were called the demons, or in some cultures, the night hag or old hag. In just about every nation on Earth, there are stories about these things that come in the night. Scientists say it's just your brain acting up. Since you're partly awake, your motor cortex fires off signals to move. Obviously, you can't because you're still paralyzed in sleep, but other parts of your brain are expecting movement. So, say the scientist, your brain fills in the blanks and creates a movement. Hence, you see someone else in the room. That someone else is you. Well, that's one theory anyway. Many people still believe those entities are real. Number 39. In the US, 2 to 6% of people live with nightmare disorders of some type. Women more so than men. Between 8 and 30% of adults have nightmares, compared to 20 and 30% of children aged 5 to 12. But fewer people have the frightening experiences we'll talk about next. Number 38. Night terrors tend to happen during the transition from non-REM sleep to lighter REM sleep, sometimes making the person shout and scream and even become violent. Because they move, these dreams are classified as an arousal disorder. Kids tend to grow out of them, but maybe 2% of adults have regular night terrors. Thankfully, after 60, only about 1% of the population gets them. Number 37. People with PTSD can have violent night terrors. They don't want to hurt anyone, but they might by accident. Here are a few night terror testimonials we found online. Typically, Cass will toss and turn, sometimes curling up or becoming very tense, but recently they become rougher and more verbal, even occasionally pushing or pulling me. I punched my husband in my sleep and screamed, "I'm going to bleeping kill you." I've been violent on more than one occasion. I just remove myself from being in bed with anyone I don't want to kill by accident if I'm sleeping with someone. And from the BBC in 2017, when Liz's husband John attacked her in his sleep and drew blood, she finally realized she could no longer share a bed with him. Okay, but why did these things happen? Number 36. The BBC story about Liz and John described John as a gentle giant, but at some point he kept going to bed and having violent dreams. John had no idea he was moving around when he was having dreams of fighting off tigers, or in some cases snakes biting into his leg. Fighting was the natural thing to do, of course, but the problem for John is he, like many others in the world, have a disorder that means his brain stem doesn't fully make his body paralyzed in sleep. Now for some more fast facts. Number 35. You can dream in absolutely any position, but if you don't want sleep paralysis, perhaps don't sleep on your back. Number 34. If you play video games or eat or watch TV right before bed, you're more likely to have an intense dream. Number 33. People have actually murdered other people in their dreams. We'll talk more about that later. Number 32. If you've ever woken up and felt really content for some reason, and you know it's the dream you just had that made you feel that way, there's a name for it: oneirophrenia. The term was coined by an American psychologist named Dr. Mark Bleckner. Number 31. If you want better dreams that make you feel good, try to lose the stress. Stress is one of the main factors behind crappy dreams. Number 30. It probably won't come as a surprise that men tend to have more violent dreams than women. Men also dream more about other men, while women tend to have just as many dreams about both sexes. Men have more confrontations in their dreams, while women tend to have more dreams about relationships and interpersonal interactions. Number 29. Studies have shown that 65% of men and 70% of women report they've had recurring dreams. Number 28. We often incorporate the sounds around us into our dreams. We're sure you've all dreamed your alarm clock was a different noise in your dream. Being hot or cold can also influence what kind of dream you have. Number 27. You don't invent people in your dreams. All the folks that appear in your dreams are people you know or have seen before, maybe on TV, in the train station, or people you know. Number 26. Scientists say there's a substance that can make you dream while you're awake: DMT. The longer word is dimethyltryptamine. As part of a brew called ayahuasca, Amazonian tribes have been using DMT during ceremonies for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. Only in the past few decades have Westerners, including techie people wanting inspiration and soldiers with PTSD, been going to the Amazon to take part in these sessions. The results are remarkable, but why? Number 25. Scientists who've worked with DMT explained, "We found that the states of deep immersion induced by DMT, often described by users as a breakthrough experience, were paralleled by decreases in alpha brainwaves as well as increases in delta and theta brainwaves. This is very intriguing because we find similar changes in brainwaves when people are dreaming. If you've ever taken DMT, you'll know that even though you're awake, you can blast off into space, or you might find yourself surrounded by cartoon animals. You can talk to toadstools or tunnel down to a hell that will scare the life out of you. These are of your own making, as are your dreams." Number 24. People who've been on ayahuasca trips have talked about overcoming years of depression or anxiety. Some of them have seen the light even though they've had scary experiences. They've been cured. It's hard to say how this will happen. Still, it's probably related to the same reason why researchers at Johns Hopkins said another psychedelic substance, psilocybin or magic mushrooms, also help people overcome chronic depression. The same thing has happened in UK studies when chronically depressed study participants talked about having spiritually significant experiences. A researcher in the UK said it seems as if during these trips, the brain rewires. Depression is often like going around and around, having the same negative fears and thoughts. So, if these waking dream states can help people, does it mean our dreams can unhook us from negative thoughts? It seems so. A professor in the US said dreams can take a painful sting out of difficult or even traumatic emotional episodes experienced during the day. The New Scientist wrote in 2018, "For the first time, researchers have got the evidence that dreams help soothe the impact of emotional events in our lives, acting like overnight therapy." It might not feel like it at times, but your dreams are your friend. Number 23. In yet another study, this time in the US, people's nightmares were recorded. The most common nightmare in the group of 2,000 people was falling. Next up was being chased, then came death, feeling lost, feeling trapped, being attacked, missing an important event, waking up late, someone dying, getting injured, teeth falling out, and natural disasters. Number 22. We don't know exactly what these dreams mean, but we do know they're universal. People from New Zealand to Nigeria, from Italy to India dream about their teeth falling out. All we can do is guess regarding the meaning, but the answer is very likely insecurity. It might not sound like therapy, but at least when you wake up, you know there's something you need to resolve. You should always try to examine weird dreams. As you'll see later, Ted Bundy's best friend once learned a lot from a highly symbolic dream. Number 21. 55% of people at one point in their lives will have what's called a lucid dream, and around 20% of people have them quite often. These happen during REM sleep when you suddenly become aware you're dreaming. It's very different from sleep paralysis, since in sleep paralysis you think you've woken up. In lucid dreams, you're not awake, and you know it. In a lucid dream, you could be chased by a gorilla with 12-inch fangs that look strangely like your grandmother. You're scared, but then you say to yourself, wait a minute, why am I running? This is a dream. And then you wake up. Sometimes you allow the dream to continue, but you won't be scared anymore since you have control of the story. Why lucid dreams happen is another uncertainty. Scientists have talked about brain chemical changes, brainwave activity changes, and the possibility of hybrid sleep. Number 20. A scary kind of lucid dream is false awakening. These Nightmare on Elm Street type dreams are unforgettable. There are certain levels. One is you think you've just woken up, and maybe you head to the bathroom to relieve yourself. A second later, you wake up for real with a warm patch of pee in your bed. Sometimes you might get up and think, damn, I'm late for work, and then wake up for real and see it's Sunday. Ah, sweet relief. Those aren't too scary. The other type is. In these dreams, you really think you've gotten up. You might walk downstairs and open the fridge, but all the time you figure something isn't quite right. You can't put your finger on it though. There's just something ominous happening. Then someone comes out from behind a door, or you realize you don't have a fridge in the kitchen, and you wake up with a jolt. It was a dream, but by God, it felt real. One guy said it happened to him twice, so he woke up with a jolt, told himself it was just a dream, and went downstairs again, but that was also a dream. Maybe this is what inspired the movie Inception. Number 19. There's also something called pre-lucid dreams. This is just when you ask yourself the question, am I asleep and dreaming? Number 18. There is very little brain activity when people are in comas, but people who come out of comas have explained that they dreamed. Some of them said they were stuck in long nightmares. A coma can mean many things, so it all depends on which part of the brain is damaged as to how much you'll dream. Number 17. Writing on the Psychology Today website, a woman said when she was in a coma, she lived a whole different life. She said when she woke up, it felt like someone had pulled me violently from one world I knew to another, as if I had stepped from one room to another. She lived in a different town with lots of stores that she frequented. She had lots of friends in town. Life just went on until she was rudely awakened and was in a hospital bed. What's stranger is that from then on, she'd return to this town in many of her dreams. It was like going back to see old friends she'd abandoned. That's cool, but not as cool as this next story about a man we'll call a pandemic hero. Number 16. A guy from England possibly had the funniest new life dream ever. Well, funny for us, maybe not for him. During the pandemic, he became very sick. He had cancer, and after contracting the virus, he was put on a ventilator. He wasn't expected to live. In his coma, instead of finding a new world full of possibilities, he found himself working as a delivery guy for the Tesco supermarket. He later told the press that for 11 days he was forced to be a Tesco delivery driver with a really crap van. In his new life, which he felt was totally real, a gang in London kidnapped him. They took him to a garage with a wet floor and tortured him with a defibrillator, after which they made him deliver groceries for a living. This was an 11-day epic, which is so good you need to hear some of it in his own words. He explained, the leader of the gang was a dwarf who kept demanding, "I want more money," then also started selling acid tabs. They wanted me to look after a prostitute. My job was to protect her. She worked with other hackers to find out who Banksy was, as he was trying to kill the Queen. There was a big event in London next to the Thames that had 2 giant pyramids. There was a film showing that night next to the pyramids that had 3 words displayed: "You are dead." We wonder how many acid tabs he'd taken in his prior life prior to the pandemic. Anyway, the good news is he returned home in much better health. Number 15. Many people have lucid dream superpowers. One guy said, when he turns around and runs backward, he is faster than anyone on the planet. Other people have been able to fly at will. People writing on Reddit said in their dreams they'd harnessed fire, shape-shifted, walked through walls, breathed underwater, controlled time, and spat out laser beams. It's a pity the Tesco worker couldn't do those things. He could have saved himself a lot of stress. Number 14. Native Americans or First Nation cultures might use what are called dream catchers, a web to collect bad dreams. The legend states that a spider woman once told an Ojibwe tribe grandmother, "I will spin you a web that hangs between you and the moon so that when you dream, it will snare the bad thoughts and keep them from you." The Spider Woman protected the tribe, but the tribe expanded and the Spider Woman couldn't protect everyone. That's why the dream catcher was invented. It later became popular in other tribes, including Cherokee, Lakota, and Navajo. Here's a good example of when a dream helped someone discover the truth. Number 13. We're sure you all know the serial killer named Ted Bundy, a nightmare of a human being. Back when he was a free man, he worked with a woman named Ann Rule, ironically on a crisis hotline that gave advice to people on the edge. For $2 an hour, psychopath Ted helped people who were thinking about hurting themselves. He was good at it. He was also smart and friendly, so Ann Rule became close friends with him. He told her his deepest secrets, and she told him hers. So when he was charged with horrific crimes against women, despite the evidence stacking up against him, she couldn't believe he was guilty until she had a dream. On April 1, 1976, after she just visited Ted in prison, she dreamed of a car accident in which a baby was severely hurt. She picked it up and swaddled it in her arms, screaming at bystanders that the baby needed help. They all turned away. Even an ambulance crew, nurses, and doctors refused to help, as she was screaming, "It's going to die if you don't help." In her book about Ted, she wrote, "And then I looked down at it. It wasn't an innocent baby, but a demon. Even as I held it, it sunk its teeth into my hand and bit me." When she awoke, she understood that the baby was Ted. She'd been fooling herself about his innocence. The dream was so powerful that she changed her mind about him. That's one of the great things about dreams. They can bring us closer to a truth hidden deep in the subconscious. Number 12. The venerated American President Abraham Lincoln would have agreed. He believed in the power of dreams and let it be known. Back in his day, many people took dreams seriously. On April 11, 1865, Lincoln was feeling downcast. He turned to his friend and bodyguard, Ward Hill Lamon, and explained why. He said he just had a dream where he saw a corpse lying atop a catafalque in the White House's East Room. He said the subdued sobs of mourners filled his ears. He then asked a soldier who was in the coffin. The soldier replied, "The president, he was killed by an assassin." A few days later, while watching the play Our American Cousin at Ford's Theater, Lincoln was shot by an assassin. He died the next day. Number 11. In those days, the dreams of famous people were published in newspapers. It was believed that dreams could tell us about the future, especially recurring dreams. According to the Sleep Foundation, between 60% and 75% of American adults have recurring dreams. 77% of those recurring dreams are negative. Number 10. Before Dr. James Watson came up with the double helix structure of DNA, he had dreams about a double-sided staircase, or according to other accounts, intertwined serpents. The guy that created the modern periodic table in the 19th century, Dmitri Mendeleev, talked about dream inspiration, saying, "I saw in a dream a table where all the elements fell into place as required. Awakening, I immediately wrote it down on a piece of paper." In 1816, a teenager named Mary Shelley was visiting the poet Lord Byron in Geneva when she dreamed of a hideous phantasm of a man, stretched out, and then, on working of some powerful machine, show signs of life. She then got to work on her novel Frankenstein. James Cameron said he had a fever dream of an image of a chrome-like skeleton emerging from a fire, which he said had a metallic torso holding kitchen knives. That's where the idea of the Terminator came from. But can dreams become dangerous? Number 9. You'll be pleased to know that dreams can't kill you. Never mind how scary they get. You can die in your dream just as Lincoln was dead in his. You can be killed in a dream though, which again is likely related to fears in your waking life. Still, dreams won't kill you. Number 8. That's not what you might have heard though. In the 1980s, after the US had bombed the hell out of Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, a lot of people from those countries went to live in the US, many carrying extreme trauma from all the chaos they'd seen. Then something strange happened. About 100 young Hmong men just died in their sleep. Physicians said there didn't seem to be any underlying cause. The men had gone to bed healthy and didn't wake up. Scientists gave it a name, Sudden Unexplained Nocturnal Death Syndrome, or SUNS. It should be noted that this part of the world is super superstitious when it comes to spirits and ghosts. So when all those Hmong guys, many in their early 30s, just started kicking the bucket, people believed it might have been related to spirits. Many of the Hmong said these men had been visited by a spirit that sits on the chest, which you know is called sleep paralysis in the West. The Hmong call this malign ghost Da Chua. So the question for the US scientists was related to if there was a connection between sleep paralysis and SUNS. Meanwhile, Hmong men were scared out of their wits, not knowing if the evil spirit woman was going to get them in their sleep. US scientists didn't think there were any ghost-related deaths. They said that in the Green Hmong subgroup, there were many cases of sudden death and also non-fatal sleep disturbances. They said Hmong men were predisposed to a type of genetic heart arrhythmia that can get worse at night when the heart is beating slowly. One doctor later said that heart arrhythmia and sleep paralysis are connected. Hmong people were told rather than placate the spirits with offerings, they should see a doctor. Number 7. Despite what you might have heard, you can turn lights off or on in dreams. Not being able to turn one on might just mean you're insecure about something. Turning on one could be positive. Possibly you feel good news is on the way, or you've had a breakthrough in work or life. Number 6. 50% of all your night's dreams will usually happen during the last 2 hours of sleep. These are the witching hours and the time you really want control of your dreams. Number 5. According to dream researchers, lucid dreaming can be learned. They say that one trick is to purposefully wake yourself up about 2 hours before you intend to get up fully. This is called the Wake Up Back to Bed (WBTB) method, which can be used with the mnemonic induction of lucid dreams or MILD technique. The latter means saying something over and over in your head for about 5 minutes before you go back to sleep for another 2 hours. This could be the phrase, "Next time I'm dreaming, I will remember I'm dreaming." If you think this sounds like hogwash, scientists in 2020 put it to the test. Not only did 18% of people have a lucid dream on nights when they used the techniques, but 5 out of 10 people who never had a lucid dream in their lives had at least one lucid dream in the 5-week period they practiced the techniques. Number 4. Sleepwalking, otherwise known as somnambulism, happens during the non-rapid eye movement or NREM stage of sleep. It happens to kids more, but in general about 7% of people will sleepwalk at some point in their lives. Number 3. There's also sleep talking, otherwise known as somniloquy. It often happens during REM sleep and also during light sleep. It's usually pretty harmless. In fact, one study showed about half of all kids between 3 and 10 talk in their sleep, often just a blast of speech that lasts about 30 seconds. Adults tend to do it less, maybe only about 5% of adults regularly sleep talk. 66% of adults have done it at least once, according to sleep medicine research, and 17% of adults had done it for a 3-month or more period. What comes out is often nonsensical or incoherent. What's quite amusing is that the Sleep Foundation said people often get really rude and offensive when they talk in their sleep or perhaps say embarrassing sexual stuff. Studies have shown that no is often a word of choice for sleepers, and in a French study the curse word putain was said a lot. It's really only a problem when it turns into screaming and shouting, which happens during those night terrors we've already discussed. People with PTSD are more likely to talk or shout in their sleep than people that don't have PTSD. Number 2. There's also a nocturnal sleep-related eating disorder, NSRED. This means people sleepwalk to the fridge or another food source. Studies have shown that they'll often eat anything, so ice cream with pizza covered in custard and curry is just fine. One study said injuries resulted from the careless cutting of food or opening of cans, consumption of scalding fluids like coffee or solids like hot oatmeal, and frenzied running into walls, kitchen counters, and furniture. Even worse, people have eaten toxic substances including cleaning agents and glue. Thankfully, this is very rare. NSRED happens to only 1 to 5% of adults. It's usually connected to other sleep disorders, eating disorders, and might be related to major depression and severe anxiety. It can also be embarrassing since people and families wake up to find what looks like a family of bears have been through the kitchen in the night. One guy said he did it all the time, explaining that every other night he'll wake up in a bed filled with food, a Hansel-esque trail of crumbs littering my bedroom and kitchen floors. Okay, last one, the weirdest one even after what you've just heard. Number 1. If you see someone sleepwalking, don't shock them with a slap or shout at them, be gentle. Lead them back to bed. The reason is they might do something dangerous. They could hurt you or themselves. In 2005, a 15-year-old girl climbed 130 feet to the top of a crane near her house outside London in the UK. When firemen got to her, they discovered that she was fast asleep. She had no idea she walked out of her house and climbed the crane, an incredibly risky adventure. Also in 2005, the British press talked about a man who had just been cleared of killing his 83-year-old father. The old man had been kicked and punched and jumped on, giving him 90 injuries. When the son woke up, his father was in the house driveway looking like he'd gone 12 rounds with an escaped chimpanzee on Xanax. The son was later subjected to what was called the most detailed scientific tests in British legal history, and he got off even though he had a history of violence. Scott Flater in the US was not so lucky. After, in the 1990s, he claimed he was sleepwalking when he stabbed his wife dozens of times and dumped her body in a swimming pool. In 2021, still in prison for murder, Flater said, "All I can say is I do not know what happened. I do know for sure I never planned it. There was nothing for me to gain from it." In Spain in 2001, a man who murdered his wife and mother-in-law with an axe said he was dreaming about fighting ostriches when he was chopping the two women up. That excuse didn't work in the courts, but surprisingly, the so-called sleepwalking defense has worked a few times throughout modern history. Now you need to watch this gruesome tale, Russian Sleep Experiment Explained, or have a look at Human Sleep Experiment that went horribly wrong.